Welcome to Stormin Chocolate. I'm Stormin Norman. Today's song is number 62, Pink Floyd's Have a Cigar from the 1975 album Wish You Were Here. This is the second Pink Floyd song we're covering in this playlist after going over Comfortably Numb in song number 12. Back then, we were still using the old format where I'd write some notes of what I wanted to say, condense them into bullet points, and then write said bullet points on a whiteboard to remind me of what I wanted to say. In other words, I was kind of winging it. Now that we've got a proper teleprompter, so I can tell you the tale I want to get across with fewer edits and better storytelling. Why am I telling you this? I needed to look back at my notes so I do not duplicate anything, especially about the history of the band. Much of what I reveal to you in these videos is where the band was mentally and professionally at the time of the song. I categorize Pink Floyd's career as having three major phases. Everything before Dark Side of the Moon, which includes the studio albums from 1967's Piper at the Gates of Dawn through 1971's Metal, the middle quartet of Dark Side, Wish You Were Here, Animals, and The Wall, and everything after The Wall, which will include the final cut before Roger took off. 1973's Dark Side of the Moon, There Is No Dark Side of the Moon.
As a matter of fact, it's all dark.
Was a monster. It's listed as the fourth best-selling album of all time by reported sales at 45 million copies, just behind the Bodyguard soundtrack at 45, AC/DC's Back in Black at 50, and Michael Jackson's Thriller at 70. Obviously, these are estimates, and hence the round numbers. For the longest time, the Eagles' greatest hits, 71 through 75, held the top spot, but appears just behind Dark Side now. And it's really in a different category, being one artist's compilation of previously released songs. I have to make that caveat because the Bodyguard soundtrack is also a compilation, but with most of those songs being contemporaneous to the movie and only 2 or 3 existing prior. That said, Dark Side was a monster. Only Back in Black above it will have songs in this playlist. I stopped being a Michael Jackson fan after Off the Wall, and you can probably tell that I'm not a Whitney fan. But below Dark Side in the list are several albums that will appear here more than once, from the albums Hotel California, Rumors, Bat Out of Hell, and Saturday Night Fever. So, what do you do after you've made a monster and you essentially have free reign? You do a more personal album. Wish You Were Here has only 4 songs, with one of those songs starting and ending the album with the other 3 in the middle. 2 of those 3 middle songs deal with the machine, although they are probably different machines. And the other middle song and the huge opus deal with Sid. Syd Barrett was the driving force of the group of musicians who became Pink Floyd. While Nick Mason, Rick Wright, and Roger Waters had all come from the same architectural college and been in bands prior, Syd moved into a flat where Roger was staying in London, and over the course of several months joined Roger's band and became lead guitarist. The quartet became Pink Floyd in October of 1966. Early on, playing 3 sets of 90 minutes overnight at the Marquee Club, they learned that they could extend songs by adding improvised instrumental pieces and thus did not need to learn a lot of songs to fill the slots. This may have led to one of the characteristics of Pink Floyd's progressive rock directions, since most of the albums up to The Wall featured songs with lengthy instrumental portions. While their first album had 8 songs under 3.5 minutes, it also had the nearly 10-minute Interstellar Overdrive and the over 4-minute Astronomie Domine, which was routinely stretched live. For example, the live version that appears on Ummagumma is 8.5 minutes. Unfortunately, the relatively outgoing Syd Barrett, ostensibly the driving force of the band and author of most of their hit singles, began overdosing using LSD, which eventually fried his brain. In December of 1967, they added Gilmour, a former college buddy of Syd's, as a backup guitarist since Syd was often non-responsive on stage. The following month, Barrett was relegated to songwriting duties while Gilmour took over recording and performing. Wish You Were Here starts with the first half of the opus Shine On You Crazy Diamond, comprising parts 1 through 5. And the album ends with the rest of Diamond, comprising parts 6 through 9. The first half transitions into Welcome to the Machine, a song about how not in control of your life you are, or aren't. Well, you know what I mean. Side 2, because this album was created in the original LP days, starts fresh with Have a Cigar, a song describing how the band members are not really in control of their careers and sung from the perspective of a record company exec. This is similar in two ways to Dark Side, where the great gig in the sky fades out after Claire Terry's scorching vocal performance, accompanying Rick Wright's brilliant piano, to the fresh start on side 2 of the Jingle of Change on Money. Hearing both of these instances on CD now, or in playlists, is kind of jarring since all the other songs on the two sides of each album blend seamlessly into each other. The second way they are similar, and I just kind of became conscious of it today, is that both Money and Have a Cigar have odd time signatures. Money is famously 7/4, and I say famously because it switches to 4/4 in the middle to make Dave Gilmour's guitar solo easier. And Have a Cigar is rumored to be 9/8. It's nominally 4/4, but every other bar has an extra twiddle on the end. I've read several explanations, and I'm sticking with this story. Have a Cigar has a wonderful transition to the next song, Wish You Were Here, which we'll demonstrate later. The title track is also about Syd, lamenting his absence and decisions that were made. It is more poignant than Diamond, and more accessible than the specific subject matter. Wish You Were Here, then, transitions into the rest of Diamond. In an ironic twist, Have a Cigar is not sung by any Pink Floyd members, but instead by a friend of the band, Roy Harper, who's recording his own album at EMI's Abbey Road Studios, where the Floyd were. As Roger was not happy with any of his own vocal takes, probably due to strain from the vocal harmonies of Shine On, they decided to give Harper a try. In my opinion, he nailed it. It is a perfect performance. And better yet, being an obvious identifiable outsider and not one of the two lead singers, he actually sounds like that record exec. Roger has lamented that he should have tried harder or tried again later to nail what he thought was to be his intended performance, the message in music. But in the end, I think we got our chicken dinner.
Winner, winner.
By the way, this is the same Roy Harper mentioned on Led Zeppelin III, where the last song on the album is a traditional blues song arranged by the band and retitled Hats Off to Roy Harper. The song has a simple structure, 2 verses, each followed by the identical chorus. The first verse contains 2 important phrases. In the first line, we get the name of the song. In the last line, we get the iconic true-to-life question, which one's pink? Which the band was actually asked by a promoter on the road.
Respect, I mean that most sincere.
As you know, I'm a big fan of long, sustained notes, and the prep you need to do, the deep inhalation prior to the note, so you can make it to the end. Another of the fun items that make me love this song. So 3 minutes into this 5.5-minute song, and we're done with the lyrics. So what does that mean? At least 2 minutes of a David Gilmour guitar solo. Besides it being great, it has one defining feature that helps you keep pace with the song. At the end of X number of bars, there's this characteristic strumming that only appears at 2 points. The first instance lets you know that the solo is halfway over, and the second tells you when the transition is about to occur. This is what the second strumming to transition sounds like. This radio part, after the change from Cigar and before Wish You Were Here, which is what you hear now in the background, was recorded on Dave's car stereo, with someone just going down the dial. Cool, no? This is very similar to the timpani on Welcome to the Machine, but we'll go over that when we hit the song on the playlist. Wish You Were Here was released in September 1975. A couple of weeks before my 14th birthday. I was introduced to the album in early 1976 by my good friend Mikey, who demonstrated it at another friend's house whose parents had both Wish and Dark Side. He played what he thought were the weird parts, the synthesizer helicopter from On the Run and Welcome to the Machine with its odd ending. I brought both albums, well, my copies, to Germany later in '76, along with Trilogy, Frampton Comes Alive, and a dozen more packed in my luggage. I listened to them ad nauseum at the base library doing my homework Monday through Friday through that first fall and winter. Frankfurt, being at a greater latitude than the Bay Area, has an extra hour and a half of darkness at the winter solstice. Music was a lifesaver. This album hit number 1 on its second week in the UK, even though EMI could only deliver about half of the requested stock. In the US, with almost 1 million in pre-orders, it was also on the top in its second week. It has gone on to sell some 20 million worldwide to date. In the US, a double A-side was released as a single, Have a Cigar as the A-side and Welcome to the Machine as the other A-side. Wish You Were Here has remained on the charts somewhere in the world over its 50-year history, except for a handful of years. For instance, for some reason in 2011, it was on the charts again in 17 countries, including peaking at 33 in the US and 38 in the UK. Well, that's it for Have a Cigar, from Pink Floyd's epic Wish You Were Here, released in 1975. Next time, we will photograph a Def Leppard participating in Pyromania. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Did they get you to train your heroes for ghosts, hot ashes for trees, hot air for a cool breeze?
Back then, we were still using the old format where I'd write some notes of what I wanted to say, condense them into bullet points. Oh, jeez. 1973's Dark Side of the Moon. Oh, man. So I'm going to say there is no dark side of the moon. And you say, as a matter of fact, it's all dark. Okay? 1973's Dark Side of the Moon. I'm saying that.
Oh.
You say, as a matter of fact, it's all dark.
Okay.
Wishy Year Toy Boat. The second way they are similar, and I just kind of became conscious of it. Roger has... It's going too fast. There's a bug in here. In my opinion, he nailed it. It is a perfect performance. And better yet, being an obvious identifiable toy boat. But in the end, I think we got our chicken dinner. So we got to do that again.
What? Because the thing?
So when I say chicken dinner, you go winner, winner.
Oh, wiener, wiener.
Yeah, don't do that. Make it funny. He actually sounds like that record exec. Roger's...
No, you have to though.
Come in here, dear boy, have a cigar, you're gonna go far.
You're gonna fly high.
You're never gonna die, you're gonna make it if you try, they're gonna love you. This is what the second strumming to transition. Right. But we'll go into that when we